A big watto to you interwebbers out there, and welcome again to Grandad's Top Tips. Now today I'm going to talk about a Range Rover LR322. It's an '07 Range Rover Sports, and this is the V8 model. Then the problem I've got with it is the suspension alarm comes on. Then unfortunately the suspension alarm could be connected to the dynamic or the active anti-roll bars as they call them, or of course the suspension itself. And then I actually know that it is to do with the suspension itself. Now the suspension may seem complicated, but it's not really. The most expensive component, or the most difficult to change, let's say, is the airbags on each wheel strut that lifts the vehicle up. And then to see if these are faulty, just set it up to heights you want to set it up. You can go for high or just normal ride height. Make a note of the height between the wheel and the upper arch. And then you can do that by sticking a bit of electrical tape onto your just here, let's say, and come up and stick it onto there. But this is winter and it's awfully wet, it ain't gonna happen. And then if the vehicle drops, you'll see the tape obviously go loose. Leave it overnight, okay, and just see if any of the corners on the Range Rover has dropped. If it has, then it may be a fault on the airbags themselves or a valve. In my particular case, all the bags are okay. The Range Rover does not sink. So the next thing to look at is under the passenger side is the air compressor. It's not common, but they are a failure point. After years of use, they do need to be replaced or refurbished. On this particular vehicle, the problem is with the accumulator tank, the air tank. What happens here is air is pumped up into here. This pressurizes the system. Should you go over a bump or air's needed, it takes it from this accumulator and pumps up the bag, and it just takes the strain off of the compressor basically. I've removed this. It was as rusty as anything to remove, but clearly you can see rust on there. Bear in mind, this accumulator needs the pressure to lift 2.5 ton vehicle. Pressure in there is quite high, and I would suggest that that is not good, and it's a good sign that this tank needs replacing. To get this off, there's basically 4 bolts that go through the chassis and connects onto these brackets here. These were rusted in, and they were one heck of a job to get off. In fact, I rounded them off and I had to use a bolt extractor, but yeah, never mind. Where there's a will, there's a way. So here we are under the car. This is the valve that goes into the air tank. As you can see, it's a bit grubby. It also looks like there is something under that rubber seal there. The other tank has a new one of these on here. But the nut on the end there, the smaller one, which is this one here, that has an olive on it, and it will compress onto the tube to make an airtight seal. I can replace this part, and I can replace that, but I have to cut or replace the plastic tubing here, the high pressure tubing. So what I'm going to do is just break open this and replace this part here with the new part. Okay, so here is the smaller, I think they call it a foos connector, I'm not 100% certain, but on this one it's quite corroded as well. That olive I think should be easy to get off if I just get a screwdriver and bosh it in between that brake there, prise that open, that olive should come off, and then that should come off, and then I can put the complete new fitting on, which at the end of the day would be better. So I'm just going to whip that off now. It's now time to fit the accumulator. What I'm going to do though is, if you put it in fully, you will not be able to connect that airline, or you'll find it very, very difficult. So what I'm going to do is just put the front end into position, leave this end down, and then connect the airline to there, and then fit it fully into its place. Then you'll see these, let me just see if I can get that. Can you see that lug on that bracket? That one there. That's quite helpful. There's one on the other side as well, because you can put that and it'll hold in place on that lug. So you don't need to worry about getting nuts and bolts in you know, as it falls on your head, you can actually put it in place first and then casually go and get your nuts and bolts, or just your bolts, and then put them in. All right, let's go ahead and fit the accumulator. Right, I'm just going to show you the center gallery here. You probably can't see too well. This here is the center gallery actuator, and it has 4 connections to it. So here is the pressure switch, which senses the pressure in the solenoid and switches between the compressor and the accumulator. What I had to do so that I could drive this vehicle without the accumulator was undo the power connection, which is that one there, and that de-energizes the actuator, which then bypasses the accumulator, and that allows me to drive without using the accumulator. Then it does get a suspension fault, but it doesn't stop the compressor, and you still get your suspension working reasonably well. So I'm just going to connect that back up again and then pressurize up the gallery. So that's it all done then. The suspension warning light is now extinguished. The problem has now been fixed. Oh man, look at this. There's still ice on the ground. It's -2, and that was one heck of a job. So I'd like to apologise for the state of the Range Rover. My next task is, once I've had a shower and warmed up a bit, had a coffee, will be to clean the Range Rover. So for now, Grandad out.